right.
This is Totally Classic. My name is Brendan McNamara.
And I am Andy Swindler.
And today we're going to talk about masks. This is the first I wanted to do a little formalish intro. I'm caught in the web of whether doing formal intros are necessary. I know some people like them. I often think it just leads to preamble and you're like, I don't know, just listen to it. Look at the subject, click on it. You already know what the subject is. You don't need to know all this stuff again. But I know some people like it. I think it settles people down. I'm not that kind of person, but it settles people down and they're like, oh, okay. They're telling me who they are. They're telling me what we're talking about. And now, it helps people just I don't know, their cortisol levels rise or lower or whatever thing is supposed to happen.
And there might be one or two folks who haven't listened to every single episode.
Right. Right, exactly. But even so, who's talking right now? I mean, does it matter? Does it? Right? Are we getting into this sort of, credentialism? These are the things I think about when I'm just like, should we just do an intro? Too late. We already did it. We're talking about masks today, guys, which I want to say I am always excited to talk about. One of the reasons, this is a quick backstory, one of the reasons we're having this podcast, and I still don't know if I ever told you this, Andy, but I love Andy Swindler, and I've known Andy Swindler for 23, 24 years, whatever, long time. Loved him pretty much that entire time. And I talk to Andy Swindler generally twice a year max over the past decade or so. Greatly enjoy those talks. They're long talks. We call them walk-in talks. We literally get out and move around, get sunshine. We make sure it's going to be an enhanced chemical experience because we're moving, we're in the sun, we're sort of sharing our journey in life as well as sharing our physical journey. It's always delightful. I always look forward to them, even though sometimes I've procrastinated on scheduling them and rescheduling them, making them happen. I reached out and started contacting Andy far more regularly via text message specifically. And it was fueled out of something to do with masks. So masks are something I started masking, especially for respiratory viruses, something I got super interested in 2020. Started immediately talking about it when a pandemic was declared and then lockdowns were declared. And I started talking to my close group of friends from Los Angeles where I lived, although I just left Los Angeles, and started talking to them about everything I was reading and discovering and trying to think through this seemingly life-shaking cataclysmic event. Pretty rapidly, my friends just stopped talking to me. I kept talking. I'm a little oblivious to things like nonverbal cues, especially when you're speaking virtually. And so this came in a couple of sets of waves with my closest friends in the world until over 2 years, but 2 years later almost, I was sent essentially a formal intervention letter / cancellation of our conditional pause on our friendship if I did not seek professional help for my obsessive compulsive disorder. They were not clear in explaining what the obsession was. But I know it sort of originated to do with me talking about masks and kind of doing reading studies on masking, and then them being kind of overwhelmed by how much information I was processing and trying to co-process with them. My therapist described it as it's kind of like when a kid, when you're trying to nap, a kid jumps on you and immediately starts wrestling you, and it's yay! And you're like, what are you doing? I'm trying to rest. So that may have been what I was doing. I was just processing the same way I always do. Anyway, in that cease and desist, I was like, okay, so they're saying I'm crazy, so either I'm crazy or they're crazy. I looked at the symptoms of OCD. I don't have it. I've been in therapy for a couple months, specifically asked my therapist about it. He does not analyze me as having had it. So I'm very happy to say, or sad to say, I don't know, that my closest friends in the world at the time have in some way taken leave of perceptions of reality. But the nice part about that was it literally sent me scurrying to my friend Ross and my friend Andy to be like, okay, I need to talk about this stuff because people are basically there. You're crazy, you're obsessed, you need help. I literally can't be friends with you unless you go get help for this diagnosis we've analyzed you with. All that to say, I'm probably going to have a lot to say about this subject, and I'm so glad to have Andy in my life.
I love you too. I did some math because I think I got, I think I passed math retreats back in college.
Yeah.
And it's 26 years
Mm. Woo.
since the big day, which we will address another big day.
Yeah.
But thank you for sharing that. And it sounds, a couple of curiosities, I don't know if you'll get into, people may be curious what happened to that relationship, but also maybe just a touch more context. I mean, what
Sure.
were you sharing that would have led somebody to diagnose you as having OCD?
OCD. I'd say for about 2 or 3 months, we were on Marco Polo as like a group chat. That's how we were, especially when we left the town that we lived in for 20 years. That's kind of how we were sharing our new lives and what we were up to. And then the pandemic was declared, and it was like that was of interest to me. And I was kind of sharing how I was feeling, that I was a little afraid because I was like, based on what I was reading, I was like, oh, having autoimmune issues like I do, I'm an immune compromised person. I was like, oh, I'm kind of in the danger zone. No one else in my group ever expressed fear, by the way. I didn't know until about 3 or 4 months ago that people were actually afraid of COVID itself. I was like, that's not a real thing. Like it's like such a rare thing. It's not real. It's like a media generated thing. I always thought, just experientially, I just never encountered it. And then, so there's 3 or 4 months though, after, I think it was like April or so of 2020, I read an NPR article that said that there sort of weren't any random controlled trials on masks and respiratory viruses, or there weren't any sort of like conclusive ones. And that sounded crazy to me. I love NPR, by the way. That sounded crazy to me. I was just like, well, that doesn't seem real. That sounds like, who would, I mean, we've been using masks since flicking like plague doctors, right? So those guys, those guys. So
Like a platypus.
Yeah. Those, I mean, the masks.
A platitude puss. I don't know.
Platitude puss, a plagueopus. So that sounded crazy to me. And so I have ulcerative colitis. So in like 2 or 3 trips to the bathroom, I found 2 or 3 random controlled trials on masks and respiratory viruses with conclusions of not effective. So I was like, oh, wait a second. Well, A, I felt heartbroken that NPR would lie to me. And then B, I was like, that's weird that they would even say that. Like, why wouldn't you just say, like, don't even address it? You know what I mean? Why would you say that? So, and I started sharing that with my friends. And then I started, as I started doing that, I was like, well, let me keep looking. If I keep looking, eventually I'm going to find material that supports mask use for limiting transmission of a respiratory virus. And I just kept looking, and I started feeling crazier and crazier because I'm now like 15 deep, 20 deep, 25 deep, 30 deep, and I'm not finding anything to really validate this concept. And then I finally started seeing stuff, but then I was like, oh, okay, but this is a different type of study, and science says this study's not as important. So then this is like an observational trial. It's retrospective. These are weak, like declaratively, not by my assessment, but how science arranges by the hierarchy of scientific evidence, like what the most important like things to follow in evidence-based medicine are and that sort of thing. So I was sharing all this for probably 2 or 3 months. And then eventually, because I'm a verbose individual, my monologues for like 5 or 6 Marco Polos were the only Marco Polos. And so I finally had to text people and be like, what's going on? Are we not doing Marco Polo anymore? And they were like, yeah, I don't know. We're just kind of over it or whatever. And then I was like, oh, and then RT was like, maybe they were sick of you talking about the thing. And I was like, oh, all right. So I don't know. It was like, that was like the first wave. And then honestly, it was multiple waves of that same thing. And so I sort of talked to them, and they were kind of like, yeah, we just like, I don't know, we don't have that much, like, it's kind of exhausting or whatever. And I was like, oh, well, you could have told me that or whatever. They didn't. So that was kind of how it waved out. And then I didn't really talk to them about it till like April of the next year, because I took 1 year of reading. I read over like 80 studies at the time. I've read about 100 and something now. Till I did a video, and I shared the video with them because I was like, oh, I haven't talked about this to you for like 6 months, 8 months. I made a whole video kind of compiling all the stuff. So then you're not overwhelmed by me constantly regurgitating information. And then they got furious with me, and they said I was being bullying and all this stuff, and I violated boundaries. And so we tried to talk that through or whatever. And then I didn't really talk to masks about masks for probably another 6 months, 8 months, until the sort of pop narrative, like people at MSNBC, CNN were saying the same things I'd said 2 years ago, like the former head of the FDA, Scott Gottlieb, or Monica Gandhi, who's a University of San Francisco doctor, who's one of the first people to say that we should implement universal masking in the United States, or Dr. Leanna Wen, who's like the closest thing to, like, I think, like a she should be prosecuted for the hate that she's like a full-on villain of the pandemic. Even she was like, yeah, you know, cloth masks are what is she? Facial decorations. And I was like, guys, this is crazy. This whole thing that for some reason led to like a division between us that I think was maybe some way about my like saying too much, but also must have been some sort of, I assume, some sort of difference of opinion. And I was like, look, guys, like, I was worried they thought I was crazy. And I was like, okay, guys, people saying the thing I said 2 years ago. So it wasn't Chicken Little saying the sky's falling. The sky was falling, you know? And then they were like, pretty much like furious at that point. And they were like, you have a problem. Yeah, no, I know. No, it super sucks. It super sucks. I'm still trying to figure it out with them or whatever. I just emailed them for the first time after like 3 or 4 months, like a few days ago.
Good.
So I don't know. I'm good. Like, I'm this opinion is not shared by some people around me, but I'm always hopeful of like, I don't know, healing's always possible. So, or even healing and before separation is possible. But I'm
conscious uncoupling.
Yeah, exactly. But anyway, this is a contentious topic, and I'm glad to be able to talk about it with you and to model for people that it doesn't need to break any friendships up. This is come, let us reason together.
Yeah. Well, let me offer a little context, especially for those joining us for the first time here today.
Yeah.
About my journey in parallel time.
Yeah.
And it'll be brief because I think it went something like this. Oh yeah, masks. That seems like a pretty good idea. Let's do that.
Yeah. See, now you're making me seem obsessive compulsive because my monologue was like 3.5 minutes and yours was 10 seconds. You're like, so, but this is helpful to me, Andy, though. Even the limitation of your monologue about your actual history is helpful to me because then I was like, and I've thought this before, but I was like, okay, wait, relative to people who have the history that you just described, maybe I do seem crazy. You know what I mean?
No, I was being intentionally brief to
I know.
To try to be funny and also to illustrate the, maybe there's a middle ground. Maybe that's part of what we're about here. But yeah. I also don't think it's healthy. We've talked about this at length. I also don't think my approach was particularly healthy or responsible. And what I think I'm going to make a few assumptions about your friends, but I think that it can feel safer to cling to groupthink than to know the truth. And sure, those of us who were kind of just going with the flow, I'm like, sure, we should wear masks. That seems, and common sense is thrown around a lot, which is a really funny phrase to use in this way, right? Because it's common, therefore it's groupthink. That's all it means. And it's like, I bought into that. I was like, and I've even, kind of used our conversations and some of your research lightly in other conversations. And it's like, as I've started to probe that terrain, it is like amazing, and I don't think I hope I didn't resist it quite as much because I tend to just be, I don't know, a little more go with the flow on a lot of things. But I mean, there are folks who are just like vehement. I mean, like you just described. I mean, I'm getting little tastes of that energy. And people are like, what do you know? What are you talking? It's just common sense. You put something in front of the thing, it's going to block the things, and that's that. I was like, really? How do you know? That's all you're asking is, how do you know?
Yeah. Well, because you can't. I mean, but the funny thing is, and I just had this conversation the other day. I was like, oh yeah, people are still having this. I guess I've been literally having arguments, and I don't mean that in a negative way. Like literally sustained systematic reasoning with strangers and friends alike, or associates alike, for probably 1.5 years at this point. And even before I did my video, I argued with people online for probably 4 or 5 months, because just to let everyone know, the point of arguing, like the use of arguing, why we invented arguing as human beings, is to test our reasoning. If your reasoning can stand up to argumentation, you have a strong argument. That's how you figure out the strength of an argument. Just the same way as like if you had a sword, you'd bang it against a bunch of things until it broke. You'd be like, oh, okay, well, it stood up against all these things before it broke. That's a pretty good sword, right? This is just basic a stick, a rock. This is just how human beings evaluate materials. And likewise, ideas are essentially materials. So I am so beyond the realm of even assuming the common sense argument exists. And I don't mean like I've transcended it, but I've just like, I engaged those sorts of arguments early, and then 6 months later, different ones, and probably another 2 months later, different ones. And now I'm kind of at a place where at this point, I have an argument that no one has been able to out-argue because I've been formulating it. I've been testing it and banging it against rocks and having pieces chipped off left and right, stabbing me in the eye. I mean, it's dangerous smithing to like formulate a concept, you know what I mean? And I would not, I'm a conscientious individual. Again, I didn't make a video about it until I studied it for a flipping year. I put in hundreds of hours of work, not my 10,000, but hundreds of hours, you know what I mean?
It's extraordinary. I was like, this is a valuable thing to have in the world.
Yeah, it was just, and again, then I'm just going to share what I know. That's what we do as human beings. But I just started addressing the common sense one the other day. But like, you put a thing in front of the thing, shouldn't it stop the thing? But that doesn't even pass the common sense test. If you put a tennis racket in front of a fire hose, is that going to make any flipping difference? You can't just put a thing in front of a thing and it stops a thing. If you
I mean, some of the water, in fairness.
Some of the water, right. But will you be any less soaked? No, you will not. So even common sense, you'd have to say, okay, a mask blocks some stuff. Do masks block stuff? Yes, masks block stuff. Do masks block enough stuff that it in any way fundamentally changes how many people get infected? The literature says no. Like most likely no, I should say. Let me be super specific in my language. Most likely, no, they do not have any statistical difference whatsoever. My best understanding of that, again, because I haven't conducted any experiments, I'm not conducting my own research, I'm literally just reading the conclusions of science. My best understanding is masks don't block enough stuff to make any difference to infections. The same way, if you put your hand over a fire hose, but kept the fire hose aimed at me, there's no part of my clothes that will not be soaked. And an infectious dose is infinitesimally small. The virus is an aerosol virus. It travels on particles infinitesimally small that can literally flow through most masks. Even an N95 would occlude only the material itself, 95% of particles. So 5% of particles are going through the mask. What percentage is going out all the leakage points? I don't flipping know. All I know is that based on the results of random control trials, it's enough that people still get infected at the same rate most of the time as if you wore nothing at all. So in that way, like it doesn't actually even pass the common sense test, because common sense to me would say, okay, well, what does science say about it? And at the time in 2020, science absolutely said, this is highly unlikely that masks do anything. Science already said cloth masks, which is the mandate in 2020, cloth masks are potentially conductive of infection. So the 2020 thing had no common sense to it really whatsoever, other than you put a thing in front of a thing.
Meaning maybe they're even worse?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we knew that from a random control trial in Vietnam. The first random control trial of cloths. It didn't really have a great control group. It was like a mixed control group. There's plenty of things you can find problems with it or whatever. But still, the cloth masks had more infections than the control group and the surgical mask group. And then there was a Bangladeshi big random control trial that was completed last year. I think they're redoing it now because it had all sorts of weird confounders that made it problematic. Again, the confidence interval of like, okay, it either worked this much, which is not statistically significant, or it harmed this much, also not statistically significant. But part of the confidence interval was that it literally led to more infections. So cloth masks, which all of us were told to wear by our government, and that's why I was at the time, I was like, wait a second, this is crazy. And I felt, again, like a crazy person because everyone was like, you need to calm down. You need to come down. Spit comes out. This catches the spit. What else do you need to know, man?
Yeah. Well, I upgraded. I put a coffee filter in my cloth mask.
Oh, nice. What kind of coffee did you brew with it? Did you brew coffee first?
I spit out my coffee to test it.
Yeah.
And it worked.
Nice. Yeah, no, I remember that was a big thing by like June or July of 2020.
Yeah, and I think, let's face it, there was some degree of desperation and again, like, and you pointed out your side, but I was living in the fear world of COVID. that was, for some reason, we haven't exactly figured that social phenomenon out yet.
No, it's amazing.
So we'll keep unpacking that. But a couple other pieces of context, one of the, well, first of all, when it all happened, it was like, oh, N95 is the thing. And beginning of COVID, I felt so proud of myself because I was like, oh my God, like I have like a couple of N95 masks in my like just handyman, whatever, around, toolbox for the house. And I had a bunch of toilet paper. I was like, I'm ready for this.
I am the last man alive. Yeah.
And I assume, like, we'll talk more about materials, but I have a new friend who's in the healthcare industry, and she was kind of a little down on N95 because she's like, well, it only goes one direction, and she was just saying, like, those kind of flimsy blue medical masks, that's really the jam, because they've got some layer that specifically is better.
They have an electrostatic layer that tends, literally, things that sort of adhere to it.
Okay. So that little piece of context I picked up. The last thing I'll weave in, again, going back to the beginning, I think part of the problem was, at least in the circles I was swimming in, the idea of the masks were kind of either just accepted, like I did, or the alternative was presented like, it really read like a conspiracy theory to me, because it was like, well, first the masks and then the gas chamber. I'm like, what? Like, I don't yes, I get that once we accept government control and just sort of blindly, follow the leader off the cliff, like, sure, I can see that. And I think there's a few steps. But I think I've used the frog boiling, metaphor here, because you've helped me realize that I was that frog, maybe still in various ways, of just,
I think we all are, honestly. I think my outrage is so below what a normal person would actually be functioning at. Like, I think I'm barely outraged, I think we're all boiling frogs to some degree. I think we're just not dead yet,
And just in case anybody doesn't get that reference, it's like, we're boiling frogs, and by the time we realize we're boiling, it is too late to jump out of the pot.
Yep. That's it. You know what? Well, what's funny is the conspiracy theory element of it. Well, not even conspiracy, but whatever. Now conspiracy theory means a vernacular term that honestly 2 years ago it didn't mean. But I feel like now conspiracy theory doesn't even mean conspiracy theory anymore, which is so difficult for me, how fast language can alter. Because I'm like a semantic nerd, so I'm always like, well, let's parse our language very particularly, please. But yeah, and the sort of the theorizing, I guess, the sort of predictive language around masks, in many ways turned out I was not into that at all. I was just like, well, what does the science say? The science doesn't say this. They're not telling the truth. I don't care about anything else. And honestly, I would have not said anything to anyone other than my friends, because I'm like processing this with my tribe, my people. Until people started getting bullying, and I started seeing people bully on social media a ton. Literally, sometimes early on in 2020, I'd say up to like 11 or 12 posts or stories a day where people were just deriding people who didn't want to wear masks. And I was like, well, hold on a second. No, we can't get to that point. And in some ways, the conspiracy theorists were correct. They were like, it starts with like recommending universal masking. Then it ends up after that, very shortly, mandated universal masking. Then very shortly after that, you are denied access to grocery stores, places of employment, places of travel like buses, taxis, schools. You can't go to school. I mean, like education, employment, the flipping library. You can't do it unless you do this thing that we demand that you do, that we never provided evidence, by the way, at the time. They had not. When the mandate came out, there was no evidence to support it. And the evidence they did provide was, there was some, but it was hilarious. Literally it was anecdotal level. It was like expert opinion level, like the least relevant scientific evidence. It wasn't there. Not to say that they were wrong, it's just they hadn't provided it. So there was no proof yet that what they were saying was real. And they were already at that stage of like, you can't go to the grocery store to get food. You can't go to school. Then the conspiracy theorists like, it's going to end up with blah, blah, blah. So it already progressed to there. Then it went from there very soon after to vaccine mandates. You know what I'm saying? So in some ways they weren't wrong, because I never heard anyone say gas chambers, but they were like, it starts with this and then it ends with like, a lot of people said it ends with like an ID card to travel. You know what I mean? And I was like, we're not far from that. There literally are right now, and I'm not being conspiracy theorist, you can go look at this up. This is widely covered. There are federal ID programs and apps available in a bunch of different states that are specifically tied to vaccination status. There's a bill right now in Rhode Island where they proposed people with unvaccinated children paying twice the amount of income tax. Not joking. I am not joking. That's the level. I just shared it on my Instagram the other day. Sent the link and everything. Like, that's the level where we're at. So in some ways, those people, I can't even tell. I think there's like, at some point there was 9, and I stopped counting, of times that I was like posting on social media where I was like, I need to apologize again to my conspiracy theory friends. I'm so sorry. I rolled my eyes at so much stuff in 2020 that I've been like, oh, sorry, that sounded crazy. You were super right. Listen, there's still plenty of people saying stuff I still think is crazy, but I'm happy to just keep apologizing and rolling my eyes. That's kind of my general standpoint or whatever. But it got bad really fast. But my question is, since you were in a different place, did that, maybe you didn't see that or it didn't happen around you. I saw bullying within like a month, maybe 2 or 3 weeks of the mandate going out, bullying amongst like private citizens, as well as obviously businesses saying you can't come into this thing unless you do this thing that we say. Which, me in general, you're an empath, so I think you experience tension with other people differently than I do. I experience tension and I'm like, oh, why are you feeling tense? You feeling tense? Like, yeah, I would absolutely, I'm not concerned. It's not unappealing to me to have tension. I'm like, oh, that's good. That's a healing moment. That's like when you massage someone, they go, I don't stop rubbing that point. Then that becomes the only point that I rub. That's how flipping massages work. You have to work around it, but you work the injured area and the area around it. So anyway, but like, did that pop up in your world? Were people bullied around you? Did you ever hear anyone like in LA? Supposedly it was happening on the street. Like people were literally yelling at people who were jogging, like put on a mask.
Well, before I address that administrative note,
Yeah,
I think we should look into the frog boiling to see if that's scientifically accurate, because I realize. In the context of this discussion, I've never looked that up.
We should. I know. Well, that's an experiment we could conduct ourselves.
Sure.
I just don't want to. Sorry, frogs. Sorry, frogs, for even talking about it.
Surely somebody has on YouTube.
Oh, absolutely.
So, yeah, this is another area you have helped me understand, because first of all, what bullying I thought existed. I don't think I saw as directly being on, I don't know, this side, if that's a thing of the whatever of the how we were gonna get through this thing. Getting vaccinated, wearing masks, basically compliance. I mean, that'd be like the word to sum up kind of how, and there's a I mean, maybe this relates to tension, because there's a part of that is my nature, for better and worse, of accommodation, of making, and so there's a piece of it that was, even to this day. I mean, I'll carry a mask and I'll be like, if I walk in and they're like, I mean, it's less now because now we're almost at 2 months in Chicago of not having a mask mandate, so things are lightening up. It never made sense to me, by the way, to be sitting in a restaurant and having all the servers and restaurant workers wearing masks when the patrons were. I was just like, what? No, what universe does this make? And and I would, see some of the airflow studies, and it was just like this is not even common sense, folks. This is ludicrous.
and it's a visual cast system too, obviously. Like, you know what I mean? And the server, you're like, this is, I don't know. You're creating hierarchies,
Yeah, and there's this fascinating ongoing intersection with your focus on masks and masks and vaccines and things like that, and my focus on racism, and that's absolutely. I've developed a sensitivity to wow, not only like often it being in the case where servers and whatnot are maybe people of color, but like in this case it's like, wow, yeah, we have taken away part of their humanity by covering up their face, which I know is something you come back to a lot about the deeper harm of the masks. I mean, mostly, right, we're just talking about almost like a neutrality of like, they didn't work, they don't do anything, we shouldn't wear them. But then I assume that the next step of this may be actually what harm has been done socially and to our well-being. So back to bullying, I didn't see too much of it, but I don't think, and here's the problem though, and you helped me see this more clearly, was I was equivocating. I was like, well, what bullying exists, I probably just saw on, I don't know, Facebook or social media, and I just imagined it was kind of equivalent, like, well, both sides are bullying each other, and basically not, I don't know, it just seemed like an oversimplified, there's just a lazy tendency of the nature of humans, I think, to just be like, well, it's just easier and it feels safer and it validates, it's confirmation bias. Like, I've already made the right decision and I really don't want to deal with those assholes who made the other decision. But you helped me as I've kind of pulled back the curtains on your part of this world. I don't think they're equivalent anymore. I really don't. I'm noticing what the bullying I'm noticing is there. There's bullying I probably don't even see as much of for whatever reason in my circles, but there's a dismissiveness, there's an assumptiveness and a dismissiveness, even in so-called like conscious communities I'm part of. Where it's the same psychological phenomenon anywhere, any tribe that's like bought into the vaccines or science, the masks are the way to go. And then there's a certain, I don't know, it's dangerous. Like there's an assumption, like we're in the room and we're with, people, because we're like with these kinds of people, they must believe in vaccines. I've been in rooms where folks are gently kind of, one literally just used language like, hey folks, I just need to say we're not all on the same page here. But he didn't come out in any kind of aggressive way. And I'm guessing he didn't say more because in so many environments, if he were to like make a big deal about that, he would just get blasted back,
That's to me, I mean, early on, it was, I just saw a lot of bullying. But again, I think you and I have very different social media. And again, most of my world in 2020 during lockdowns was on social media. I don't know if that was everyone's world, but that was my world. My world was my social life was dominantly built on social media. I also was aware that like we're in a crisis mode. So I was definitely in like, I need to be as helpful as possible every day. And since that's my community, then when people are being bullying, and this has been my whole life's joy, honestly, is people are bullying, I'm going to do whatever I can to stop the bullies from bullying. That's like my favorite. It's my favorite. It's like one of my favorite things to do since I was a little child. I think I talked about this before, but I had a slightly Dexter-like tendency towards violence. And so I would wait and seek out, like, I mean, to a point where I'm acknowledging it as a malevolence within myself, that I would literally like kind of hunt for bullies. I would like get so excited when I'd see a fourth grader like grabbing a kindergartner and smashing his face into a fence or something. Because I was like, oh, yes. And as a second grader or third grader or whatever, I was like, I'm smaller than the fourth grader, so I can totally attack him. And then he's beating up on someone smaller, so I'm going to hurt that person very, very badly so they never do that again. Now, again, I say that fully acknowledging that was also my desire to do harm to another human being. But again, this has just always been my jam. So I'm saying that too, acknowledging the psychological sort of components of myself that were eager to rise up against bullies. But people would just say things and call people ignorant and be like, put on the damn mask. What's wrong with you? Threatening, people saying killing grandma stuff. I mean, there's so much like cliche stuff that happened in early 2020. And I have this thing with social media that I just came off of a Lenten fast from. If I see something definably false that someone is saying, that is the one obsessive compulsive tendency I have. It is my compulsion to correct that fallacy. Same thing if I'm around someone out in public. If someone says something that is definably false and I'm eavesdropping, I'm going to say something. See something, say something. And I know that for some people that's going to be a little aggressive. I feel pretty ethically solid in that. And that I think that's what as much as we can do so. Everyone has their own individual capacity, but that's fundamentally what we're supposed to do as a community. When people are mistreating people or speaking lies, we speak against lies. This is probably one of the problems with early Trumpness, let's be honest, is that he was a bully and a tyrant and people were like, ha, 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 and then everyone else ignored it. No, we don't do that. Like you stand up to bullies, right? And maybe I've just seen too much 80s television. But for me, that was like super activating And it was people with power who were punching down, because it was like, no, you're punching down on the people who literally can't go into a grocery store without getting harassed. So you're literally harassing the harassed from the position of a harasser. And I was like, I don't understand how you can sleep at night and talk that way to people. Especially, again, this is an issue where it's like you don't have science on your side. This is not a science issue. And I think, oh, that's a question I had for you too. Like early on, when you, like, if you heard anything, maybe you never heard because there was no tension around you, like you're talking about. Yeah, early. But people early on, this drove me crazy. People were like, well, it's, you know, I believe in science, follow the science. I believe in science, wear a mask. And that's one of the things that drove me flipping nuts, because that was like, I heard that said so many times. And I was like, masks aren't, mask used for respiratory virus is not what science says to do. So that's not a science conclusion. You know what I mean? I was literally following the science, and people started like being furious at me or whatever. So I was like, no, this is not, like, you're not telling the truth. This is not science. And I think that's what was, man, this is therapy for me, but like, that's what was so disruptive to me, Andy, is like, as a Christian, my worldview is not based on humanistic principles. I think the dominant humanistic principles of existence, as far as I reckon them from my outsider perspective, are science, or like knowledge basis, science and reason as sort of like two big like tent poles or foundational bricks of what make a humanist understanding of what reality is, right? And so that's how I was approaching this whole endeavor of like, oh, well, what's up with masks? And everyone was furious at me. And I was like, wait, all I'm doing is talking to you. I felt like I was being attacked for speaking their language, and then they weren't speaking their own language. And I was like, all the people I was having arguments with. And I was like, this is so discombobulating to me. You know what I mean?
Well, one thing that comes up is, it's funny what's stuck away in there. Some video, I don't know, probably saw it on Facebook.
Yeah.
And it was like somebody who refused to wear a mask to go to Costco.
Yeah.
And the way it was presented to me, combination of the person who filmed it, Facebook's algorithm.
Oh yeah.
Where my mind was like, I don't know. I don't think I came in that hard, like, what the fuck is wrong with this person? But
sure,
definitely there was an element of like that they were in the wrong.
Sure.
Like, come on, like all they're asking you to do is like all they're asking you to do is wear a mask. All they're asking you to do is be safe. All they're asking you to do is protect your fellow citizens. I mean, that was the kind of narrative I think that was happening with me.
Yeah.
Of course, I don't think I'd be here talking to you if there wasn't also a piece of like, I wonder why they don't want to wear a mask. That's interesting. I think it's, so I think some people just flat out, especially maybe in America where we celebrate individualism and authoritarianism, it's like,
yeah,
like basically, fuck you, I'm not going to wear a mask, don't tell me what to do. So
sure, yeah,
that I probably paid a lot more attention to that rebuttal of the mask thing, which I also don't think is healthy, because that's certainly not based in science. That's just based in like, I want to do what I want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and it's the same argument of why people were doing it without looking into it.
Yeah. So those are kind of,
it's the same. It's the same. That's the crazy thing, right? People were arguing and having the same argument. I'm going to do what I want to do. No, I'm going to do what I want to do. Well, I don't want you to tell me to do what you want to do. Well, and then this is to me why I think I don't. F you, don't do what you tell me is a slightly better argument, because the other person is saying, no, you have to do what I want to do, and the person's saying, I don't want to do what you want to do.
Right. You're asking me to change.
Yeah, you're asking me to do what you want.
Right.
I'm not asking you to do what I want. I'm just saying, don't make me do what you want to do for you. You know what I mean? Just in the relativistic, this is why it shocked me that like liberal bastion places were super like, wear a mask. Like that makes no logical sense philosophically. You know what I mean? If you're a liberal, then you're open to ideas of others. That's literally the definition of the word. So then this is a case where it's like, no, you have to do what I have concluded is the right thing to do. And I was like, I can say that. I would say that in an instant. I'm a Christian, literally. For me, like, God's law is absolute. It is not refutable by any. So like, I live in that world. I'm okay with like a theocracy if it was functional as opposed to dysfunctional, run by humans. You know what I mean? But I was like, this is like Sharia law, dude. This is like we say that this is the truth and you must obey our truth. Even though, again, with masks, a brand new thing. Before 2020, I've never had a single argument with a single human being, and I'm an argumentative dude, in my whole life, in 40-something years, had arguments with anybody about masks and respiratory viruses. So it's not some tradition-based thing or firmly entrenched, thing that this is what we all know. No, no one's ever even talked about this before. That's amazing to me. Like how quick, but again, I said this to you too. This is the interesting thing is like, it's washing how quickly people latch onto and create identities. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like within months, it became anathema to analyze data in a particular fashion. And that's amazing, isn't it? It's kind of, I mean, in some ways it's kind of neat. It's interesting.
Well, yeah. From an abstract sociological context,
Yeah. If you're not in the middle of it, yeah.
Along with a long list of things that are probably going to destroy us. And
yes.
And I think part of what happened was like we just sort of skipped over the science part while also labeling it as science.
Yeah.
And quickly went, I mean, where I got on board with it, potentially based in no science, was based in care.
Mm-hmm.
I've been researching the Care Bears a lot lately.
Love them. Love those guys.
Really get to the root of what it is.
Yeah.
And that the idea was like, this is the way we take care of each other.
Yeah, interesting.
That is how I read it, and that's how I still read it. Whether that's actually based in truth or not, that's the ideology.
Yes.
And you're right. And I think the tribalism that emerged, and the perhaps tragedy there is in some way, if I don't know, I don't even know what sides are anymore, but if you and I are on two different sides of this thing,
sure.
I think we're here because we actually both believe in the ideology of care. Yes, let's be healthy together. Let's take care of each other. But the how of care is what's totally up for grabs here.
So difficult.
And so that, I think, is one reason it got so like fervent and angry and urgent, was like, because it wasn't just even like, it was actually a step beyond like, oh, I want you to wear a mask for me. It was like, you are the reason this pandemic is going to be prolonged. You are the reason more people are going to die.
Isn't that amazing? That's what but in some ways, that's the great thing is that is a good argument. It's just simply not true. Like it's false. And we all know that now. There's literally nobody who doesn't know that that's not the case, right? Because we've had 2 years, tons of mask mandates, vaccines, dude. And literally since we've had vaccines, like we had 2020 with just mask mandates, and then 2021 with vaccines and mask mandates, and 2021 was worse for COVID than 2020. We all know that. That's just like, that's a fact. So we know that argument was false. The funny thing I want to ask though, because I never heard that, I heard people argue that, and I was like, yes, if that was true, that would be very convincing. I completely understand. So that way I do understand. I can't experience empathy with that, but I can sympathize with it, and I can do the first part of empathy, which is understanding. But I can't feel that with someone because I'd be feeling a false feeling, But my question is, and especially because you have that feeling, which again, it's a good motivation. I heartily commend that motivation in you, myself, and anybody who wants to do that, right? Take care of people? Hell yes! Yes for care. My question is, who told you that it was doing that? Like, that's the fun, like who, because no one told me that. No one told me, literally no one told me that. So then where would I invent that from? That it was caring for other people. You know what I mean? Who's literally what person? There had to be a person or a thing that you read written by a person. So a person, a single person, let's be honest, first told you that thing. And so far, whenever I ask people this question, no one's ever been able to answer me. So I don't know, I'm no pressure on you to be the first, but who told you that was the case?
My instinct is to trace it back because the N95, because there was a very early discussion that the N95 was a superior material. So right at the beginning, there was an understanding of the difference in material, which is the part of the mandate, even beyond your science, is like the part that confounds me, is just like that we never actually, it didn't seem like the mandates tended to specify anything about the material.
No, they're like, put something over your face.
Got it.
Yeah, exactly.
So I would want to go there. And, somebody I follow a lot is, Bo of the Fifth Column. It's like, I remember him talking about the N95, and, he's like a survivalist, military kind of guy. So, it's like, seems like he probably knows a thing or two about survival gear and masks, and he does, you know, in kind of more warlike situations, and how to deal with like toxic, you know, chemical gases and things like that. And so I was, you know, like, okay, so it's probably one of the first reference points that I had of just that there was this, you know, I had those masks and I never looked at the label. I didn't know what N95. In fact, until you said it on this call or whatever run, I didn't even know if I knew it meant 95%.
I think that's why.
I never looked up like what it actually means. So anyway, we'll continue to illustrate the differences in our research.
Okay. Oh, but there was, so at least you know but there's a person. You know what I mean? I think a lot of times people said that and they didn't even have a reason. So they literally be like, I don't know. I guess my aunt, right? I'm telling you a lot. This is the crazy thing. So many people are like, oh, you heard from your crazy uncle that masks don't work. And then I was like, for most of the people I spoke to, and again, I've argued now with easily, I don't know, 80, maybe 100 people at this point. Some very long, some very short and bitter and angry. But they're like, oh, you know, you research this, right? You heard it from your crazy uncle on Facebook. And I was like, for most people, where did you flipping hear what your point of view is derived from? It's from somebody on fucking social media. You know what I mean? Some random person told you an argument. And if you heard someone say, oh, it's a way to care for people, your ears pricked up because you're like, I like caring for people. And why wouldn't you? But still, you just heard it from a flipping person. And even if you heard it from flipping Dr. Fauci or whoever, do you know who Dr. Fauci is? I don't. I just knew he was like a villain of the AIDS crisis. I don't know anything about that dude. Like, why would I trust that guy? You know what I mean? Or Trump said it, or Trump didn't say it, or Biden said it. Who are these people? I don't know these flipping people. What expertise do they have? You know what I mean? I don't know. Like, and I'm not even saying like, don't trust them. I'm just saying, well, wait, why would you trust them? That doesn't make any logical sense to me. You know what I mean? If you have this guy, Bo, the fifth column, and you have an experience with him, that at least makes sense. You're like, oh, well, he's researched a bunch of things. And I've found them to be effective or accurate. Like that at least makes sense. You know what I mean? In terms of like receiving information from a trusted source that you previously validated is all I mean.
I mean, it's not like I actually cross-reference his stuff. You know, I just blindly follow the one voice.
Well, no, but I was saying if he said things that are reasonable, you know what I mean? And you've reasoned them through. But just a quick note, until I think it was like the end of 2021 or maybe early 2022, the CDC, on the CDC website, I need everyone to remember this, don't erase history. The N95, you could go, I still have a screen cap of it somewhere. There was a little cartoon. This isn't just like in obscure language. N95s, X. They said, don't wear N95s. Do not wear them. The only mask that in a healthcare setting has ever been effective and only in one of like 6 random control trials. So it's mostly a failure. Let's not pretend N95s are some miracle thing. But if you're going to do anything, it's the one thing you could be like, well, maybe this will work. Even you still couldn't mandate it. If they had mandated it, I wouldn't have been flipped out in 2020, by the way. If they'd mandated N95s, I'm like, well, all right, this is the only long shot. It's completely reckless to mandate N95s. It was counterintuitive to reason to mandate cloth masks, whatever. But anyway, I just want people to know that like you heard that early, and that was like a reasonable thing to be like, well, if we're going to do anything, you should do that. Yes, that is completely accurate. The CDC said literally don't, for 2 years of a pandemic. Said X, no, don't wear N95s, wear cloth or wear surgical. And you can go, oh, well, they said it for this reason and that reason, this. I don't give a patoot what anyone's reasons are for saying something and now the funny thing is what do you mean? We all know N95s are the best. I mean, come on. People already act like that's like, it's this, I just read 1984 during this pandemic, which is probably a great or terrible idea, but it's like East Asia has always been at war with West Asia. I mean, what do you mean? That's how it's always been. We've always known N95s were what we need to do. The cloth mask was a holdover. No. They specifically said, don't wear those. The CDC, y'all. Come on, y'all. Woohoo!
Have you forgotten nothing since the last pandemic of our lives?
Exactly. I mean, the stuff we've already forgotten in this one pandemic is pretty amazing. It's kind of incredible. I mean, it's incredible too that we're in 2022. We're still having these arguments. By the way, like that's insane. It's insane to me. It's insane to me too because then mostly the experts who sort of fueled the narrative, because I've been focusing on the narrative, so I know why a lot of people have said the things that I was asking you, like where you heard it from. Many of those same proponents of people are always like, why are you saying this? Have then been like, well, like for example, Dr. Monica Gandhi, one of the earliest in early 2020, before the universal mask mandate in the US, published a paper on essentially on like dose regulation, that a mask wouldn't, that would reduce the infectious dosage, therefore it could drive infections down. They weren't saying, oh, masks have worked in the past, because that would be false. But what they're saying is it could. And so she was an active proponent. She's out of the University of California, San Francisco, commentator on CNN and whatever, like a widely published and cited like public health expert over the pandemic. She just did a thread on Twitter like a day or so ago, sort of compiling all the data to being like, well, we can see, you know, she's not opposed to mask use still. But she's definitely like, well, we're N95s, basically is where she's at. But she's like, well, we can see that like mask mandates didn't really have any significant effect. That is largely what most of like public experts have said about what has transpired the past 2 years. And I just want to say that out loud for everyone to understand, that is that even the crummiest support, and the reason why those narratives were reaching your ears, my ears, it wasn't true. So we need to get into the place of like, if you bullied anybody, y'all, this is one thing I want to talk about. Like, we need to apologize. You need to go apologize. You need to make restitution. You need to stop. You need to learn from it. That's not, we don't divide over things like that. You know what I mean? Especially because there's what a crazy arrogance to assume that you know this minority case is going to be true. You can believe it all you want. You know what I mean? You can argue for it all you want, but like, we don't bully or divide or get tense or weird or turn it into a tribal identifier or anything like that. Like, mask mandates didn't really make a difference. And we knew that ahead of time. Like, I knew that. I'm a flipping actor, dude. And the only reason I know that is because I literally read the published science and the conclusion of scientific study in that area. So I'm not surprised. Other people are like, why didn't this turn out this way? The only people who think that are people who didn't read the literature. That's all. You know, and again, I don't hate those people. I probably get a little bit into hate the bullies, but it's my job to love my enemies. And I'm just be like, okay, those are my enemies because they're enemies of reason, compassion, etc. You know, but I think mask is such a great thing, Andy, because it's so identifiably like just crummy. It's like you can sort of have a position. It's a minority position. There's nothing wrong with that, of them being effective. But it's like, oh, we were wrong. Great. Like, we can really see that. We can already see that now, even though it's crazy. People are still arguing about it in the courts. But it's a mirage. It's political theater. It's false. It's not real. They're not relevant. I love masks. I love wearing masks. It's been very hard for me to see masks dragged through the mud the past 2 years. I wish I could wear. The only exciting thing is I could wear them as fashion now, and no one thinks like, oh, get out of here, you know. So that's exciting. But like, we have such an opportunity to heal, knowing that like this is. I mean, to me, the argument is over. Like the argument's done. The mask people ultimately were pretty wrong, and certainly wrong to like do it the way we've been doing it, arresting people, assaulting people. I've been threatened with assault and arrest multiple times by authority figures for simply asking why. That's it. Just literally, I'm not even joking. Literally just saying the word why 6 or 7 times and not getting an answer. We did it. We got it wrong. But now we can focus on healing. Like, we can focus on figuring that out. You know what I mean? Like, I don't hate you. I think that's so many people's fear about this, you know? And I think, again, this is part of the thing that I was worried about in general, that this makes it much easier to hate a person. You know what I mean? Covering a face makes it easier to hate a person. And Andy, I just want to tell you this one thing. A, we're into the zone of healing, but there you go. Now I hate you. No, but no, like really, like I don't hate you because you saw that Costco person who was like, why don't they just fall in line? You know what I mean? I don't understand it. And I would say to you, like, why would anyone listen to someone at Costco? Like, why does that person at Costco have more authority over that person's face than anyone else? But I do want to show you on my notes. I don't know if you can see it. I actually wrote this way before September, but I wanted to share it with my friends. I wrote this before the mask mandate came out. And I was like, let's say, even if masks worked, which they most likely don't, maybe they do, but they most likely don't. I was worried, here are the problems with masks, even if they work. And number one is empathy. And I'm telling you, I have serotonin was next, then limits bacterial input and output, oxygen deprivation, they're uncomfortable, overriding bodily autonomy is not good, especially for children, especially for women, especially for anybody who's marginalized in any way. They encourage people to be afraid. They tell them that there's danger around, so that's in giving a thumbs up to the spirit of fear, anti-science, et cetera, et cetera. Those are just before we even get into like the harms of physically putting a thing on your face. We know microplastics have been found in people's lungs at this point, especially if that's from usually surgical or poorly made surgical masks, as well as we've put, I don't even know how many freaking metric billion tons of mask trash into the oceans. Like literally anybody who advocates for masks, honestly, you have to shut up for 2 years about climate crisis because you don't give a patoot. You don't care. You don't care. You know what I mean? About pollution and like trash. You know what I mean? So, but like, and I think that has been borne out more than anything. And I think, and I say all that because I want to bring it back to your wheelhouse of like the radical lack of empathy, even just in trying to understand someone else's point of view, emotional response, and line of reasoning has been at a level I've never seen in my 44 years of life, where people seem to have no desire even to comprehend someone else. You know what I mean? In a way that like, I didn't know people acted like this. You know, I mean, I knew in people's darkness, but I was like, I didn't know that this was acceptable. And it's socially acceptable. Like you were saying, it's socially acceptable for people to do that, you know? But how do we get, like, you're an empath, like expert. Like, is that true? I mean, I know it's true for children. This is how children learn empathy, is by seeing an entire face. But like for grownups, like have you seen that? Have you felt that as an empath? And then how do we get back to that place of like not letting the physical mask have like literally alter our perceptive DNA? How do we do it? Save us, Andy.
First, we take a breath.
That's a good idea.
What?
Don't just do something. Stand there.
Couple things piled up along the way. So one is I did want to point out, and maybe we'll put this on our social medias. This chart that you know from the CDC of all places that you have that illustrates the lack of difference in places that had mask mandates and didn't, with I think infection rates, right? Yeah.
People, it's just infection rates. That's really all masks are relevant for, unless you talk to Monica Gundy.
So that, you know, that to me is so compelling because they're almost identical. And I also wanted to know if you could define patoot.
Oh, patoot. Oh, like your patootie. It can either be your kind of your face, your ass. You know what I mean? You're a cutie patootie. You're a little. I don't give a patoot. Like I don't give an ass cheek. It's kind of how I think about it. Yeah.
You know, for accessibility, we'll make sure.
I know. I think I swore one time on this pod. I try not to swear in general. Like I'm trying to clean up my language and use more beautiful language and not default to shock words. You know what I mean? I like a good swear word used in proper dosage, but I'm trying to regulate my salt output.
Good for you. I'm trying to be more vulgar on this podcast. So
there you go.
We're learning a lot about ourselves.
Yeah, we're going to meet in the middle somewhere.
You know, there's another phenomenon in there that and we could do a whole piece on this, and I'm sure it's going to come out in the next election cycle anyway. But just the energy of authoritarianism and the allure of it.
Sure.
Just at a psychological level, you know, we're all at some level, whether we like it or not, whether we want to admit it or not, at some subconscious level, there is a tendency to be like, yes, parent, make me safe.
Sure. Yeah.
And there's quite a bit of irony, at least in, you know, because Fauci was presented as an authority on this subject.
Yeah.
And a lot of folks, particularly a lot of liberals, I think, were like happy to follow that, happy to say, well, you know what? He's an expert. We ought to do what he says.
Yeah, and he's a virologist as far as I'm aware, which is hilarious. So that does not make him an expert in masking at all. Like his opinion is as credible as mine, if it was pure opinion, is what I'm saying.
Right.
Which is interesting, right?
And I don't know that I ever was like, oh yeah, I'm all in on Fauci, but I also didn't question it that much. You know, I'm kind of neutrally. But I think the thing we could, I'm sure, unpack a lot more later is like that attraction to authority or authoritarianism is also pretty much the same. Coming from those same liberals was like the anti-Trump argument, like that we don't want to be led by somebody like that.
Which is not true, right? Which is funny. I mean, it reveals itself to be not true. We actually do want to be led by someone like that, which is weird, right?
Well, and I think a lot of that has to do with presentation and personality. Like Trump
Yeah.
is a vulgar person. I hope we could, we probably, it'd be fascinating to unpack him, although I don't know how much attention we want to give him because he may just be drifting out. Who knows? But
yeah, I kind of hope. I hope.
But it was entangled in this, obviously, as he was president at the beginning of the pandemic.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. There's a couple pieces there I wanted to point out, and just again, like, why is it? Like, why did we trust Fauci? Why did we trust anybody with something? Because it's, maybe it was the subconscious, oh, parent, make us safe, please take care of us, give us the answer.
Yeah.
And also just a desperation to know an answer, like when something so big was at stake. So I do want to get back to your question, as we like to wander around, but the other thing, and maybe we can hold this as a question for now or another time, but it's been bubbling up for me for a while now, like, well, under what circumstances could we justify a mandate? I mean, if there was incontrovertible evidence that something was absolutely in the interest of public safety, I don't know, maybe like a seatbelt is a good comparison. It's like, but you're like, no, they're actually horrible. Never wear a seatbelt.
They would just, it had to be, you'd have to, at the very least, right? The first, we can't answer this comprehensively, but the first answer is this is just reasonably. It would have to provide a bit like an overall benefit, right? So the benefit would have to exceed the harm. That would be at least the first. We'd have to answer at least 3 to 5 questions, I think, as I'm just sort of thinking through it. But the first would be like, you'd have to demonstrate quite convincingly greater benefit than harm, which masks never passed. Vaccines still have not passed. I still think of vaccines have like declarative scientific efficacy for their stated purpose. I'm just saying that in case anyone gets confused, which is why it's a separate. We've talked about it separately from masks, whereas masks, I was like, come on now, who are you kidding? Like vaccines, you can have an argument about, but masks, like, it's very silly. But yeah, that would be just number one. It would have to be more benefit than harm. And masks have not met that, by the way, just in terms of like, we can see the harm, right? I mean, my goodness gracious, just socially. Like if you can't talk about it in a group, that's more harm. You'd have to, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of lives you'd have to save in order to override that phenomenon of a taboo, introducing a brand new taboo tribalistic subject to a society. I mean, how many lives is that worth? Especially if it doesn't go away, because it hasn't gone away for 2 years. What if this mask thing doesn't go away for like 20 years? I mean, you know what I mean? Just the social harm alone, how many lives would that be worth? How many lives would that have to like legitimately, demonstrably save? And then how can you even prove that it saved that many lives? Oh man, that's a good question though.
Well, we can loop back, but that's a good segue back into your question of the interpersonal dysfunction of masks. Yeah. So aside from the humor or possible reality that they make people more attractive. So I never really got into the style part of it. I mean, I have a couple masks, I guess, that are, but there always seemed like a trade-off. And it seemed like, somebody had, and maybe somebody had come out with, I've seen like, dark blue in 95. So I'm like, those look a little nicer or something, but I haven't seen it where somebody's totally mixed, but like, this looks amazing or blingy or whatever and cool. And it's made of the most amazing material, which has been, scientifically proven to, prevent COVID droplets from spreading. Okay, I haven't seen that, and I just personally, never got into that part of it. So that's maybe one of the virtues, especially for somebody like you who likes masks and like, it's another way to express myself. Yeah, I'm thinking back to about a year ago, almost exactly when we were in Chicago, getting vaccinated and starting to kind of come out and even be together a bit more and, still wearing masks. And then a couple months later, starting to take the mask off in the summer. And there's a kind of a fragmented relational piece there, right? Where it's almost like, I don't know what there's like a game, I think, where you can switch out like eyes and switch out noses. And
yeah.
And it's like, it's kind of like that. Cause I would see somebody's, this eyes up.
Yeah.
and then my imagination would fill in the rest based on whatever data I've collected about,
Sure.
all sorts of things.
Sure.
And then it was almost never like remotely what that person really looked like. And so
No.
it's almost like maybe the phenomenon of like, I know when I've go in and out of having a beard. I had a beard for most of COVID, shaved it a couple months ago. And, men in particular look radically different. So I think that's an interesting comparison. Like with like, if we have a big beard and then we shave, it like takes an adjustment. I mean, there's even videos of like babies crying and they don't recognize their fathers, right?
Yes, totally.
So it's like, yes, there's a piece of that. I don't know, just I don't know what the term would be necessarily, almost dissociation of like, whoa, is this, I have to like remap this face and this person into my world and my psyche and my understanding.
Yeah. Do I know you?
So at the most basic physical level, like, do I recognize this person and their shape and their form? That's a challenge. And then, like, there's so many cues. Arguably, far more of the cues we're reading from each other are physical than the words we use.
That's what people say. I'm not that person. I'm starting to think I have like some sort of disorder. I read the other day, it's like 90% of communication is nonverbal. And I was like, not for me, dude. 90% of communication for me is verbal, and I'm semantic fiend. I was like, I might be on the spectrum. I don't know. But that's what most research tends towards, is what you're saying.
Well, and that's controversial. This is an area where I've poked a bit and realized it's one of these things, and this happens so often, where like the original study kind of was very specific. I mean, most studies are incredibly specific, right?
They are. Oh my gosh, yes.
And I don't remember it all precisely, and it's not worth the time. But even in that, like he's even, the guy who did that experiment has even come out and been like, well, it's not. That's actually not exactly how I intended it. It's not. Universally true that these precise percentages of communication styles are, so take that to heart.
Yes.
But and maybe that illustrates it, like, because I've always studied communications, so that like going way back. So maybe that's like, oh, those are the things I'm going to poke and prod a little more deeply into. Like, how do we relate? And you think about like things that like I don't know, deaf folks who depend on reading lips a lot of the time, right? Or hearing impaired folks would certainly, all of a sudden we've like cut off like an entire layer of communication. I mean, to whatever extent the body language thing is accurate, well, here we are kind of at a chest up, thing for the last couple of years anyway. Which is not exactly the point, because that's, we're, other than me a second ago, we're not wearing masks on Zoom so much. Maybe that's what we should start. We should start a movement to wear masks on Zoom.
On Zoom only, and then see how long Zoom lasts. Yeah.
So I'm just kind of working through what I remember of your list. So without those cues, I mean, I was actually joking, and if I was a billionaire, I might have made this, like, to have a mask that had an LED panel on it, and it would read your muscle cues. And if you were smiling, it would put a smiley emoji.
I think people developed something like that.
Really?
I do think someone has, like, I mean, it's not anything that people were buying, but like I do believe that was in development. I remember seeing it at some point during the pandemic period, so whatever. I don't know. I'm not going to tell you this. This is not an attempt to be a accurate quote, but like, robotics students in the University of Tokyo. Or whatever, what I mean? But like some people had been like, oh, we get this, especially if they're like, this is our future. We do have to find some way to start communicating via emoji or whatever, facial emoji, to like let people know what's happening. Because it's flipping confusing. This is like living in an era, like a Sharia country, right? Because we're like back to this now, where you're like, this is the only thing that must be seen.
So we all learn to smile with our eyes, which is an actor. I assume you studied that. That's it. I think not knowing, like the mouth and the cheeks, the chin. I mean, there's so much of our communication is this facial expression. And certainly emotionally, right? And just not knowing. I mean, we figured that out in college. Only 10% of my jokes land, but they're damn good.
They're good, solid 10.
So it was maybe not the most scientific study, but I was just like, I was feeling like even fewer of my jokes were landing, because I'm like,
Oh my God. Oh,
Because I have a deadpan style, and like people are like,
yes. Wait, what?
wait, I'm like, I'm like, damn it, this
I
doesn't
know.
work anymore.
And enunciate. And for me, it was good because like I need to enunciate more in general. It's not something I focus on. And then I'm not that amazing at eye contact when I'm speaking. I'm a good listener with eye contact, but not a good speaker. It's something I've tried to work on as like New Year's resolutions and stuff. In some ways, I thought mask wearing could be helpful with that because like you got to lock in and you have to enunciate because I've had many repeat interactions with many people where I'm like, wait, what? I'm sorry, what? Especially when they start putting up those hilarious, the shields, the plexi shields. More harm than good, people. Don't ever forget, more harm than good. And I mean that literally, like that's just a true thing. So if someone was like at a store, like had a mask on plus the shield, and they would try to be like, ask me a question, like, what is your name, is this, sir? I'm sorry, what? And it would happen like 2 or 3 times. I'm not that anxious of a person, but if I have to repeat myself or ask another person to repeat themselves, oh, it's making my stomach churn just thinking about it now. Like that awkwardness of having to like re-communicate the same point multiple times. This is why I'm not that great of a teacher.
Yeah, I relate to that.
So it makes me quiver. It's making me hot. I have sweat on my body right now. Sweat.
Well, and like I'm thinking, like this was all kind of in the name of like a mass empathy, right? Like, oh,
yes,
we need to mass empathy, not mass sympathy.
yeah.
Maybe both, but
yes,
but yeah. So I'm immediately going to the interpersonal piece, but like this whole idea of like care. We called it care there. Like, oh, if we all wear masks and we all get vaccines, and we all just do this and we all do lockdown, and we just do all these things, this will all blow over in 6 months, and we can just kind of do that. Which there is a kind of empathy to that, even if it's misplaced scientifically. But in exchange, we've lost a lot of this interpersonal. We traded this ability to have interpersonal empathy, this ability to connect with each other.
Yeah. And I don't know. I think it's actually not even empathy. I think my theory. It's just theory. Maybe you have a different theory because you're empathic. So you might know how people are actually feeling. I think it's false empathy. I think it's literally. You're not even concerned about somebody else's feelings. You're really thinking about your feelings in that case. You know what I'm saying? Because like, again, this is like if people, especially when people weren't really around people that much, then you're saying, well, because everyone's really afraid. So we got to do what we can because everyone's so afraid of this thing. How do you know other people are afraid? Are you a natural empath? I'm really not. It's something I had to pray for and it's something I work at. And I have it to some degree. And I honestly, I found it a little different. It makes life more difficult, but more complex and accurate, if I can say that. But it's like, what are you talking about? Who are you helping? Like, who are you making less afraid? You know what I mean? The mask thing throughout human history has been a sign of someone you should be afraid of. If someone puts on a mask, you have reason to fear them. I have been asked to leave grocery stores because I wore masks well before this pandemic. When you put on a mask and go into a bank, someone's going to pull a flipping gun on you, dude. Like, this is covering your face means you're up to no good. That is most of human history. You don't see masked statues with flipping masks on them unless you're like like a Muslim country or whatever. But like in general, you know what I mean? A veil is like it may be a bride, maybe a rare occasion, but like a mask would mean you were veiled before you're killing someone. You'd see that on helmets that cover the face. People in war, in battle, you don't cover your flipping face unless you're up to some sort of mischief. As an actor, performer, you might do it, but then you all sit and you've all agreed you're going to be changing who you are. You could do it in sacred rituals, but it's covering your face is serious business throughout all of human history. And
there's definitely those guys who actually pulled the lever to fire the Death Star ray.
Yes.
In Star Wars.
Yes.
Yeah,
you can't, because in some ways, if you see their humanity while they're doing that, it's kind of overwhelming, right? When you do a terrible thing. That's why people cover their faces. You can't find out who I am. And again, I'm just like, I'm hot, I'm hidden. And I know this as an actor and as someone who likes masks. I've worn out at Burning Man. I wore the same lucha mask I wore for most of this pandemic. I'd wear it like all night sometimes. I'd wear it for like 3 or 4 hours at a time. Full face mask, guys, covers just this. And I like it. I dig it. I like wearing masks. I like superheroes, all that sort of stuff. Now, granted, that's mostly covering this part. Covering the mouth is like the weirdest, let's be honest. And that's what we were doing a lot of. And again, I like to talk, so don't do this to me. And no surprise, censorship has ramped up in the past 2 years. And as the same time that we did this, just for a little metaphor alert. But yeah, no, it's so fascinating. I'd love to talk to you about that too on the interpersonal front, because I always felt like this is why I tried to talk about this early on. I was like, this is part we can all talk about. This part of it's dangerous. It's scary, right? Even if you think they work and I think I see that they don't, then like, but we can still talk about like, okay, here are all the stuff. And this has been one of the biggest problems of the past 2 years. People aren't allowed to talk about harms of things, which is super weird. It's happened with vaccines and stuff too, or lockdowns, same thing. We were like, well, no, we got to talk about all of it. Like this is what our show is about. You have to talk about all of it. Like this is all fair game. It's all fair game for us to all discuss what's good and what's bad. That's common sense. That's how you evaluate things, you know?
That's how we make it common.
That's how we comment it.
Well, I deeply appreciate you asking the hard questions and sticking to it and really opening my eyes to a deeper inquiry. And I know we don't see eye to eye on all the things, and that's part of the beauty of it. But I genuinely appreciate the deeper inquiry.
And thank you for talking to me about something that a lot of people shut down about. And I hope I seriously, like with such a deep part of myself, sincerely hope that this is not just like a BS session. People are like, oh gosh, keep talking, guys. You like hearing yourselves talk. I really hope this is illuminative to people on how you can talk about this. This is not anything that anyone needs to be tribalistic or tense about. It's really completely unnecessary. It's not. If you think that it is, you're just literally wrong. You're straight up wrong, demonstrably wrong. This is absolutely something we can all talk about everything, but this more than almost anything, any hot button issue at the moment. This is how you talk about it, guys. It's not that hard. It's
a public health issue.
Yeah, it's a thing. So we all have public health. And again, the thing I think you nailed on, I just like, if we care, then we have to communicate. Let's be, like your shirt says, Andy, let's be careful.
And we don't have to be bears to care.
Yes, done. And episode over. I love you, man.
Love you too. Bye.
Bye.